Hi, I'm Rainer, and welcome to my training room. Decided I'm going to build another house, and this is the second one of the two houses that I bought some time ago. If you look at one of my earlier videos, you'll see the house that I built that's in that back corner over there that I got for $2. And they were at a trade show, and they were selling the stuff for really cheap. It was part of an estate sale. So this is the second one I picked up, the same make, Patal HO scale house, and a very crushed box. And these were apparently fairly cheap kits. That one went together pretty well, but it was kind of a, I don't know, almost a snap together house. I'm not sure what this one is like. I've just opened the box, and obviously everything is here because it's in a nice, still sealed bag. Although the little ladders or whatever these are here, I'm not sure what they are. Oh, railings for the stairs seem to be cracked. What I'm going to do with this thing is I'm going to do what I did with the other one. I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to prime all the parts with some flat black paint like I've done with the other things, and then I'm going to build this house and try to make it look like it's not a really cheap house. So let's see how this goes. First thing I've got to do is open it all up, get it primed, and then start working on figuring out what colors I want on everything. So this is what the instructions look like for these houses. One side just shows you the parts diagram. The other side shows you this kind of drawing with lines and arrows of where things go. Generally, I think these are pretty easy kits to build. That's the intention. But the drawing just kind of shows how things connect together, which is good because you can see at least with this roof where this chimney goes, and it goes together this way rather than this way. Not that it really matters, probably, because it looks pretty much square. It does have a base, which for this house, I don't always use the bases for the houses, but for this one I will, because it kind of helps hold the wall square when you're putting it together. And so the first thing I need to do here is get the walls off of the sprues. And these walls all have these funny little tabs on them to connect them together. So I'll just show you once I get this cut off of here. What happens with these walls is, I think this probably goes here. It looks like it's going to fit. One wall has a double tab like this. The other one has a single one. They just kind of go like this, and they kind of almost sort of connect together, but they don't really hold anything together, so they do need to be glued. But they are kind of vertical alignment tabs, as you can see. But there is a lot of flex to them, so that's why it's usually easier to just assemble the house on the base. So basically, I'm going to get all these walls off the sprues and then figure out what goes where, and get it all located, because sometimes it's easier to put certain walls together and then get other ones together. So I'm going to kind of test fit everything to make sure I know how it goes together before I start gluing anything. On these houses as well, the windows go in from the outside. So I am going to actually assemble all the walls together. Then I'm going to paint the outside of the walls to the color I want. Then I will install the doors and windows, do the interior illumination, and then finally put the roof on it. I'll probably pre-paint the roof and kind of weather it before I put it on, but that's the plan. So right now I'm going to just try to get all the walls attached to the base here. Once it's on, the glue is set, I'm going to go spray paint the outside of the house. And then once that paint is dried, I will start working on the windows. Actually, while that paint is drying, I'm going to paint the window frames. And so I'm going to spray paint the walls, but I think I'm going to paint the window frames with a brush, because there's some paint that I want to use that, well, I don't think I need to spray it. So that's the plan. So let's see how this goes. I just use a little bit of sandpaper and rub the edges on it just to get the burrs off of it from where I cut them off the sprues. So this kind of looks like this interior dividing wall between the house and between the one side of the house and the other, because it's supposed to be looking like a split level house. So I think what I'm going to do is start with these two walls, because I think everything else can be built up around them. One of the things to remember is when you're putting these kind of houses together, you want to make sure that you're holding the walls together nice and tightly so that you don't end up with gaps, so that when you put lights inside, that the light shines out through the corners. But you also don't want to hold your fingers right on the corners so that any glue seeping out doesn't glue your fingers in. So at this point, I'm just going to leave it sitting and let the glue set for a while before I put the last two walls on, because this front corner is kind of, well, trying to pop apart a little bit. So I put a clamp on it, just going to let it set before I do the last two walls. So I have the walls all assembled, painted. The windows and the doors are in, all the windows that I'm going to put in. The back one, I'm actually not going to worry about covering the windows because this is going to be against a wall, and you're only going to really see the front of it and actually this end of the house because of where I'm putting it on the layout. So next thing I need to do is put some lights in here. Now I've actually run out of, this is the last one of my warm white pre-resistored LEDs that I have. I've ordered some more, but they haven't arrived yet. So this was actually put into a little enclosure to do something else, and then I changed my mind. So I'm just going to use this on this side of the house and then put an individual little LED on this side. So what I'm actually going to do now is connect them in series. Now this is through a resistor, so it doesn't need to be in series with the other one, but I'm going to use the same resistor effectively for both of them by putting them in series, and it will make them a little bit more dim. That's totally fine with me. I don't want it to be too bright in the house anyway. I'm keeping this house really simple inside because it's going to be a backdrop house. I've got the windows that came with it. I use them. They have these little vertical blinds, so it means that I don't really need to do anything with detailing inside. I am putting some brown, paper here, and the same thing in this one, so that it blocks the light from going through the back windows and lighting up the backdrop. But that's about all I'm going to do with it. So right now I'm going to try to solder these wires in. So what I'm doing is this connector is eventually going to hang through the floor. This is what I'm using for all of my buildings, these little 2-pin connectors. If you look back in my videos, you'll see what I'm doing. It makes them really easy to connect, disconnect, move them around, things like that. Red, of course, is positive. Black is negative. On this LED, black is negative, yellow is positive. On this little unwired LED, of course, like all of them, the longer lead is positive, the short one is negative. Now, when you connect them in series, and this is where it gets a little confusing if you're not used to dealing with electricity, the positive comes in, goes to the first LED, negative goes out, connects to the positive of the second LED, and then the negative of that one will then connect back to your power supply. So you need to keep these wires straight. This is the negative from my power supply, so it will actually connect to the negative or the shorter lead of this LED. So I'm just going to pull them apart a little bit to give me room to solder. I've already slid a piece of heat shrink on here. So as long as I can get these two to stay together, I should be able to solder them together. So let's see what happens. Let's see if I can do this without burning my fingers. So soldering iron's nice and hot. Get some solder on here. And let's see what happens. And that's connected. Now I need to do the same with the other one, which is actually the negative from the first LED, which connects to the positive of this one, because I'm doing it in series. Same thing. I'll put a little bit of flux on both of them to try to get it to grab quickly before my fingers burn. And that should do it. Slide the heat shrink up, keeps these wires from accidentally shorting together. And I'll just warm it up a little bit to shrink it so it doesn't slide back down. final connection, we'll grab some slightly larger heat shrink that will fit over both of these wires. And that should be good enough. So now what I'm going to do is pull this LED back in here. That should work for just lighting up the room. Nobody's going to be looking in there, so they can't really see what the LED looks like. This one is going to go at the bottom. And this LED will get glued to the wall to just provide some general ambient lighting. So I think I will just put it like, which way do I want to put it? Like that. So I'll use these little kind of locking tweezers to hold it in place. I'll just dribble some super glue on there, and that should be our wall lights. Nothing fancy here. A little bit of glue in there so that doesn't shift around. And we should be good. Now let's do a quick test to see if our lights actually work. And they do. Now this is a cool white light. This is a warm white. That's okay. Just gives me some different lighting, and this will make it look like they've got their blue light of their TV on in the living room or something. So that's completely fine with me. It is going to work. I'm just going to let this glue dry, and then I am going to put the roof on the house, put the railings on the stairs, maybe do a little bit of weathering on the siding because the roof is already painted and looking the way I want it to. So it's just kind of the final assembly, any little final details, and then we'll get the house on the layout. So I got the house assembled. It is back there. Fits right in between my gas station and the other house. You can just kind of see the top of it behind the train station there. That's the other one that I did that was the $2 house. So for anybody who didn't see the earlier videos, what I got was those two houses together along with the church that's at the other end of my layout. Picked them up for a package deal of $5. So I finished the assembly, got the roof glued on, did a little bit of weathering on the outside of it, as you saw in the video there. For the weathering, I just had a mix of some of these acrylic, craft paints that I then just diluted with some isopropyl alcohol and just kind of brushed a wash of that on there. And once the alcohol was evaporated, it was basically dry. So it's there. I can't see it with all the lights on maybe, but there are lights glowing inside. So it's in place right now. Obviously, the landscaping needs to be done around it. It's just brown painted plaster at this point, and this foam is just here to kind of give me an idea of where I want to build the road later. That's not what I'm actually going to be using for the road, I don't think. But at this point, it's just there as a placeholder, and I'm probably going to be putting some more trees in there and things like that. So nice part is the house is there. It kind of gives me some structures along the back wall between the gas station and those two houses. It's kind of a little roadway that leads behind the train station. And so that's a good starting point. Of course, all of the yard around the front of the gas station needs to be built, and I got to put the pumps in and things like that. But that will come once I start building the actual road and doing the rest of the terrain and the landscaping and the grass and the trees that are going to actually be staying there. Some of those might be staying there, but I've got to get that work done on basically the other side of the track. So at least now I have the structures built that need to go back there. Anyway, these kits, if you see any of these kits, these Patal Engineering kits at a train show and you see them for cheap, don't be afraid to pick them up. With a little bit of painting, they actually end up looking like a fairly good, 70s, 80s type of house. The one over there is, two-story house. This one is a side split level house. So there's not a lot of kits that I've seen that actually represent that kind of era of houses. So I like them because that's kind of what I'm going for, is the 70s, 80s look in my town. And those houses fit right in for the era that I want. I think my village area, I'm going to be building some more kind of older looking houses. But for here, that kind of sets the era. That's what I'm looking for. Now I've got to build the restaurants and other businesses in this front area. But for now, I'm happy with how those turned out. They are background buildings, so I didn't bother going into a lot of detail in the house or getting fancy lighting or anything like that, because nobody's going to be looking at them that closely. They just can't get that close to them because they're back there, and there's going to be other buildings in front as well. So anyway, I'm happy with how it turns out. They are really easy to assemble, and going from, the bare plastic, like with any model kit, just a little bit of paint when you assemble it can make a world of difference. The weathering on the roof means it's not shiny plastic anymore. And it also helps the texture of the shingles really stand out. So overall, happy with them. It turned out really well. And yeah, if you see any of these kits somewhere and you can get a bargain like I did, don't turn them down, because they can turn out to be some really nice houses for your layout. Thanks for watching. See you next time.